Aloha class, continuing on with brief exercise 3-4, Midwest Industrial Products Corporation makes two products, product H and product L. Product H is expected to sell 50,000 units next year. Product L is expected to sell 10,000 units. A unit of either product requires 0.2 direct labor hours. The company's total overhead for the year is expected to be $1.92 million. The company currently applies manufacturing overhead to products using direct labor hours as an allocation base. So allocation base is direct labor hours. If the method is followed, how much overhead would be applied to each product? Compute both the overhead cost per unit and total amount of overhead cost that would be applied to each product. So overhead cost per unit and how much would be applied to each product. Right, so let's break this down a little bit. Right, so product H has 50,000 units, product L would be 10,000 units, total overhead is 1.92 million. Either unit costs 0.2 direct labor hours. So how many direct labor hours are we going to need? Well, I know that this company applies overhead based on direct labor hours, and so that means it's one plant-wide overhead rate, so like a predetermined overhead rate. I know to do that predetermined overhead rate, I need the total manufacturing overhead divided by the allocation base, which they told us was direct labor hours. But I don't actually know the total direct labor hours that I need to produce all my products. So I got to figure that out, right? So for product H, 0.2 direct labor hours, I would times that to know that I need 10,000 direct labor hours if I'm going to produce all of product H. And I'm going to need 2,000 direct labor hours if I'm going to produce product L. So this is all of my production. I only have two products. And so total direct labor hours, I could just do 10,000 plus 2,000. So I have my total allocation base, right? So I have my numerator divided by my denominator. I figured out the total direct labor hours I'm going to need for all my products. So my predetermined overhead rate would be $160 per direct labor hour. That's what I calculated. They asked for a single unit, how much would be applied to a single unit. Well, I know a single unit, right, using traditional costing with the one predetermined overhead rate, one unit takes 0.2 direct labor hours. One unit of product H, so 0.2 direct labor hours times it by the direct labor hours cost, right, by my predetermined overhead rate. So the cost of a single unit for product H would be $32. That's what they're looking for, right? Product L also takes 0.2 direct labor hours for one single unit. This is my predetermined overhead rate, and so every single unit that I produce will have $32 of every unit I produce will have $32 of manufacturing overhead applied to that unit. So that's on a per unit basis. Now let's think about how we're using this one plant-wide overhead rate. This 1.92 million will be allocated to product H and product L, and it won't be a straight divide, right? We're going to allocate it based on this predetermined overhead rate. We could do it based on units. We could also do it based on direct labor hours. So in total, right, it's 10,000 direct labor hours. Oh, maybe we can just refer. 10,000 direct labor hours total for product H, times it by this $160. How much of this 1.92 million is going to be allocated to product H of overhead? It's going to be 1.6 million will go to product H because we're producing, because we take up so many direct labor hours. For product L, maybe I'll insert a row. Product L, I have 2,000 direct labor hours, times it by my direct labor hours, right? 2,000 direct labor hours times it by predetermined overhead rate dollars per hour. Give me this overhead amount. So and we could sum these up to make sure we got all the overhead, 1.92 million, right? So that's how we're going to divide out this manufacturing overhead. 1.6 million will go here, and 300,000 will go to product L. And so this is traditional based costing. It could be skewed because based on the number of hours I use, or on a per unit basis, the units, usually this can distort costs, but when we switch to an activity-based costing, usually the costs, the overhead cost will move from high volume products, because this is 50,000 units, high volume products to low volume products, right? We'll shift this overhead from the high volume to the low volume because we're tracing the costs more accurately using activity-based costing. So your solution, right, for number 1, on a per unit basis in total, that's how we'd allocate to product H and product L. Moving on to part 2, management's considering activity-based system that might, and would like to know the impact this change might have on products. For purposes of discussion, it is suggested that all the manufacturing overhead be treated as product level, and it would be divided in half between products. Right, so using activity-based costing, we have this total or manufacturing overhead is divided equally, or it's traced and it's more accurately, and it's divided between the two products. How much overhead cost per unit would be applied to each product? Right, before we had it was $32 per product, right? But to divide this overhead on a per unit basis, let's look at how many units we have. We have 50,000 over here, and we have 10,000 units over here. So on a per unit basis, the dollar amount divided by the units, it cost us $19.20 applying the overhead instead of the 32, and then $96 instead of the 32 for product L if we are going to apply overhead in this way, right? And so just for part 3, explain the impact of unit product costs of switching cost systems. When we're able to track the costing using ABC more accurately, we can see how before we thought each product was going to be equal in the manufacturing overhead, and the high volume products were shouldering a lot of the costs because it had a high volume, but we can see that the true costs were underlying under the lower volume products, and that's what activity-based costing says. We shift from a high volume product to low volume products, and we're able to price our products more accurately to, get better margins or price it so that we're not losing money. And yeah.